Time no longer. Chapter 1. Challenge. The ways of God are mighty and marvelous, yet very basic and easy for any mind to understand. His methods are demonstrated in every facet of His creation. In the world of nature, there are unlimited examples that reveal God's power and character. From the delicate beauty of an orchid to the majestic power of an erupting volcano, nature paints us a very real and accurate portrait of the works of the Creator of the universe. Approximately 6,000 years ago, God decided once again to demonstrate Himself and His love for the universe. He chose to create a new world in our little corner of the universe for this purpose. When we love someone in a special way, we want to show them over and over again how much we love them. We tell them repeatedly that we love them and send them gifts, such as flowers, to express our love. We try to do anything and everything to make them happy. God's mind works in much the same way, only on a grand and magnificent scale. He again wanted to show every living thing in the universe His unselfish love. He did so by creating the human race on a new planet, Earth. But God's newest creation backfired on Him. Humanity failed miserably in its attempt to assist God in His plan to manifest His love to His universe. God had another reason for creating humanity. It was at this time in the history of the universe that God's authority had been called into question by some of His subordinates. God not only wanted to demonstrate His love to all living creatures, but He wanted to prove that His love was unfailing and thus prove His right to eternal authority. It remains to all a mystery that the human race cannot or will not choose the way of love. God's love is pure, so simple. Love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, and thy neighbor as thyself. Mark 12:30 and 31. How much clearer can it be? But God is all-wise and is capable of turning any situation from a negative one to a positive one. He has millions of positive plans for every negative one that sin can concoct. The history of this obscure planet, a tiny dot of sand on the limitless map of the universe, demonstrates this fact time and time again. The Bible is God's documentary record of humanity's walk through the history of the planet Earth. The sea is a simple and beautiful place. If you follow the laws of the sea, you can survive and enjoy its wonders. If you do not adhere to its laws, you will eventually suffer dire consequences. Likewise, if we follow God's laws, the world will be peaceful and a wonderful place. But when humanity makes and observes its own complex sets of laws, the end result is what we see in the chaotic history of this planet. If we review this history, it should become obvious to even the most casual observer that God recommends His way of living, not because it is His, but because it is the only way for anything or being to survive. The failure of observance and attempts to change or modify the law of God are well chronicled in the Bible, God's history book. It is also well documented in the historical archives of the world. There are two subtle differences in these accounts. First, God authored His book before the fact, and second, the Bible is totally accurate. It is an exact account of what has happened and what will happen on this planet. Humanity's historical records have often been modified to serve the author's purpose. Many records have been lost or destroyed, but God has carefully preserved His record for all to read and understand. Suppression of God's Bible has been a lifelong dream of the evil one, but God would not allow it to happen. He kept the sacred book safe and intact through man's long and arduous journey on this earth. It was written and preserved to be man's guidebook during his sojourn. It contains a wealth of information concerning what has been, is, and will occur. With the advent of the printing press, access to the Scripture now became open to everyone. It is the most frequently translated book ever written, and the most widely read and quoted. The King James Version, which I prefer, is difficult for many to comprehend, but many newer versions are available in hundreds of languages and dialects. There is no excuse not to at least read the Bible in some form so as to make one's own conclusions as to its authenticity. That is all God asks of us. Take a look, mankind, and see what you think. Taking a cruise in one of the world's great oceans or seas is one of the most relaxing things man can do. No phones, no deadlines to meet, and no hassles, just a peaceful week or two on the water. It is no surprise that it is such a popular form of travel vacation. But, despite all the relaxation, one must still observe the laws of the sea and nature. If a passenger jumps overboard at sea without a life preserver, death will surely come. If a man kills another, as stated in the commandment number 6 of the Ten Commandments, the consequences will surely come. If God's law is followed, good will come, but if his law is broken, evil lurks around the corner. The Bible and world history exhibit this fact over and over again. God always wins the battle. Humanity has had 6,000 years to realize this simple fact, but the human skull is a very thick bone, and the laws of God and nature are continually broken or ignored completely. For these violations, humanity has paid an awful price, and as the book of Revelation depicts, this price is to escalate at a rapid pace in the near future. Is it possible to stop this awful chain of events? Unfortunately, not. What then can the downtrodden human race do about this predicament? Is all lost? Everywhere we turn, evil seems to be overwhelming the forces of good on this planet. World population is climbing at a rate that will surely bring about an end to this old earth. We see crime on every street corner and at every level of society. Graft and corruption reach the highest level in every country. The environment is slowly being destroyed by man's failure to live his life within the laws of nature. War after war has been waged with absolutely nothing of significance being accomplished. The armies tire of the carnage and the economic loss and retire to fight another day. All the above, with continued violation of every human right, is leading man straight down the primrose path to his eternal destruction, just as God has so tragically predicted. God has used every available resource at his disposal to attempt to turn man around and steer him off of his self-destructive course, but man is a stubborn animal, and for 6,000 years he has stayed his course. Through the centuries, Eve has remained the eternal scapegoat for man's plight, such a convenient out for man. Blame all our troubles on poor little Eve and ultimately on God who created her in the first place. Why didn't God leave well enough alone? The universe was sailing along in perfect harmony. Why mess with a good thing? Careful study of the book of Revelation will give us this answer. Eve did commit the first sin. The die was cast, but she most certainly cannot be blamed for the infinite number of transgressions that followed. God may have never created a being that could not choose to serve him before he created the human race. Lucifer questioned God in the courts of heaven, and eventually God may have given in and told Lucifer that he would create a race of beings that would be allowed to make the choice between God's way and that of the devil. Someday we will be able to read the accounts of those intense debates. It was with the saddest of hearts that God gave in and let Lucifer try it his way. God had to prove once and for all that his way of love and goodness was the only way to maintain eternal existence. The price of this 6,000-year experiment has shaken the universe to its very foundation. But it will be a successful experiment and will prove to every living being that God is love, that he alone is the way, the truth, and the life. To perform the experiment without bias, God had to create a race of beings fragile enough to be able to choose either way of his own accord. Enter man. God created two perfect beings in his own image, hoping against hope that they would be able to discern the correct path. He took painstaking care to give them every chance to succeed, but they failed miserably. Eve is often considered the weakling in this scenario, but what of Adam? Adam, too, was weak. His love for Eve was stronger than his love for the God who gave him life. In fact, the God who gave him Eve. What a simple and beautiful test. Choose one or the other. But as is seen in the Old Testament story of Abraham and Isaac, God, though demanding our love for him be supreme, does not ask us to abandon love for those close to us. Abraham was asked by God to sacrifice his only son in Genesis 22:2, but it was only a test. Abraham was able to pass a test similar to that which Adam and Eve failed. Is it any wonder that God chose him to carry on the lineage of God's only son? What immense faith! Abraham was able to keep his son, but God could not. God has a plan for each and every one of us, but if we fail, He has myriads of alternate plans to guide us through the storms of life on this earth. He had one for Eve, but she chose the love of self over the love of God. He had an alternate plan for Adam, but he chose the love of another over the love for his Creator. Make no mistake, these are not people of little faith. They had as great a faith as any human beings who ever lived. They were personally created by God as perfect human beings in His image. They spent countless hours, no doubt years, walking and talking directly with their Creator. What a privilege that must have been. When we meet some great person or hero such as the President of the United States, a war hero, or a movie star, it seems to give us a new strength, new faith, or new energy to use in our life. How infinitely greater would that strength be if we were meeting with God on a daily basis? God was preparing Adam and Eve for the test He knew would come. To be what Adam and Eve had become, the people of great faith and intelligence, with an unparalleled love for God, their teacher. Oh, the tragedy of choosing not God's simple, pure love, but their own complex method as the better way of life. That brief moment in time has led man into unbelievable chaos and unimaginable tragedy. The courts of heaven rang with the shouts of Lucifer's legion of angelic followers. He had won a great victory, or so they all thought. But God has a plan for every eventuality, no matter how dark things may appear. If Adam had not taken of the fruit, another plan would have been instituted. God does not ask us to leave our loved ones on a permanent basis. He will always reunite us when the time is right. It is theorized by some that this test of love for God was not something new. Some believe that God had created beings in the past, and these beings passed their test of love with flying colors. Adam and Eve may or may not have been the first potentially mortal beings to fail the test of God's authority. We may never know the answer to this question, but we do know the result of Adam and Eve's decision. They, in effect, placed themselves above God. The end result is the history of the human race. And what a race it has been. The devil had already questioned God's authority. The power of angels, both physical and mental, is far superior to that of any human being. Yet as all beings, they have to make that simple, intelligent choice. Do I, or don't I, serve the God who created me? Lucifer was the first to challenge God's supreme authority. His power and cunning, which can never be underestimated, took him, one-third of all the angels of heaven and the human race, down the road to final and utter ruin. It was this simple challenge of authority by Lucifer, Eve, and Adam that put into motion God's alternate plan. Plan B, if you will, was put into gear to save as many of God's created and beloved beings as possible. But God, in this process, lost one-third of His precious angels and in the neighborhood of one-half of all humanity. Superseding all of that, He lost His only Son. You think you have tough decisions to make in life, and we all do, but the human mind cannot comprehend in the slightest way the magnitude of the choices God the Father had to make. He has lost billions of humans and angels' lives to the deadly ogre of sin. He has also had to give the life of His Son to save a few. The strongest of human beings may be able to give up his life for a friend or even a stranger. But no sane person could even think of giving up the life of his son or daughter for the life of another. God alone could and would love us enough to do such a thing. It was the only way He could preserve the universe and ultimately life itself. What unspeakable love that is!